Hola clase, me llamo Señor Ritenour, and it is good to see you. Bienvenidos, welcome to a new week. Click the YouTube button below to make the video bigger. Alright, so I've been doing a lot of soul searching, a lot of thinking as I'm putting mulch and rocks and everything in my yard, and I realized after talking to a bunch of you that we need to keep these distance learning lessons simple, alright? We need to maybe not go for a whole hour, but get the really important stuff and do that in maybe half an hour. So that's my goal this week. All right, I'm gonna try to use one of my least favorite words. I'm gonna try to shut up a little bit more. Um, so we basically will have less video learning, but what we do have is going to be so good. It's going to be rich and powerful. All right. Because I think that's what's most important. Then the rest of the day, I hope that you spend at least 20, 30 minutes reading a book. And I know you have books because everyone was part of the Book of the Month Club. So at least you have at least 6 or 7 books from that at home. Plus, I'm sure you have some other books as well. So that's really where you're going to get a lot of your learning from as well, is from books. All right, so it's great to see you. I thought we would start off with a video from Carson Smalley. Now, I just have to say before I hit play, this video doesn't have Carson in it. It has his pet gecko named Pablo, a leopard gecko. It is one of the coolest at-home extracurricular school projects I've ever seen. The video editing is just amazing. So shout out to Carson, excellent work. And we're gonna watch. It's about 3.5 minutes long, but it's really cool and it's chock full of facts about geckos. So this will be like our science for the week as well. So take a look at Carson's video that he made about his pet gecko shedding its skin. Wow, great job, Carson. Um, Not only just like knowing those facts and researching and that, but also the whole side of it that we didn't see, which is the video editing side. Trust me, I've done a lot of that, and I know how much work that takes. So I liked your background song too. That was very nice. I thought it was well selected for that video. So I love Pablo, man. I can't wait. I want to bring Campbell over that he can meet Pablo. He'd go nuts. Campbell has literally been going all around the house, flipping over rocks, looking for hoppers, aka toads. Um, he literally will get so excited. He'll flip over a rock and go, and then there'll be nothing. And then he'll look really sad. Or he'll find worms, and he loves, this is terrible. I shouldn't be telling you this, but he loves to pick up worms and just see how far he can pull them apart. It's terrible. I'm trying to get him to stop because he's killing these worms. But anyway, little boys. Okay, now I told you I would stop talking as much and I would start teaching. So let's do it. Common sense today. You should already know this, but words of wisdom. Never chew or talk with your mouth open. Couple reasons. One, it's disgusting and gross, and no one wants to look at you. But two, your food particles can be easily sprayed whenever your mouth is open, and A, that's unappetizing. Um, B, it can spread germs, and C, it creates a mess. So don't do it. Keep your mouth closed. Finish chewing before you decide to start talking. Nobody wants you to look like this guy on the screen. All right, so mini lesson today for math. I told you we're done with multiplication, so we're going to start decimals. Now, many of you remember that I tutor a bunch of fourth graders, so I get to see what fourth grade math looks like on a weekly basis. And in fourth grade, one of the biggest concepts is decimals. So I'm going to try my best to prepare you for next year. One thing that's interesting is that decimals used to be a third grade topic. When I first started teaching, you would teach decimals before I even taught fractions. I personally think that decimals make a lot more sense than fractions. And I think that maybe if you're like me, you might think they're a little bit easier as well. So, like most math concepts, the best place to start is with what it means. So ask yourself, what is a decimal? Look at my screen here. A decimal is a fraction with a base 10 denominator. A fraction with a base 10 denominator. Well, what does base 10 mean? Well, let me draw some arrows. Here's what base 10 means. 10, 100, 1,000. You see the pattern? 10,000. See how I'm just adding a zero? Those are all base 10 numbers, right? A multiple of 10. So guess what? Earlier when we learned fractions, there was halves, there was thirds, there was fifths, sixths, sevenths, eighths, ninths, tenths. There was all kinds of different denominators, right? Now that you're working with decimals, there's not. In fact, there's really only two that you need to know for third and fourth grade, and that is 10 and 100. So we're dealing with fractions of tenths today. So every single fraction has the same exact denominator. How nice is that, right? Okay, so let me clean off my screen here. Look at my example that I gave. Go ahead, and I want you to read this number out loud. All right, now read it again with me. Ready? 432.1. One more time. 432.1. Okay, now this is the new part. This is the decimal. This right here as we learned in our geometry chapter 2 weeks ago, is called a point. It separates whole numbers like 432 from decimal numbers, 0.1. The way that we say point can sometimes be said in a different way. Sometimes we call the decimal point and. And then, if we're using the word and, this number right here, we don't say and 1. We say and 1/10 because of where it's at. All right, I just gave you a lot of information, so let's recap. A decimal is a fraction with a base 10 denominator. So right here, I've got 1/10. That's what the 0.1 means, 1/10. This is called a point. Sometimes we say and. So we might read this whole thing, 432 and 1/10. All right, let me undo here. Okay, good review. Place value makes understanding decimals easy. Let's look at this. What place value is that in? Everybody? The ones place. How about this 3? What place value? The tens place. And how about this 4? What place value? The hundreds place. Challenge. How about this one? Here's our new place value, all right? You ready? This is weird. It's like tens, but it's got a snake sound at the end. Tenths. See how it has this TH? So this is the tens. This is the tenths. Because this fraction right here is worth 1/10. Okay. So now we understand our place value. Hundreds, tens, ones, tenths. One more time. Hundreds. What comes next? Tens. How about this one? Ones. And our new one is tenths. So this is going to be out of 10. All right, now, see how it's a 1? It's worth 1/10. What if I did this? Oh, undo, sorry. I'm going to change it to a 2. Now, my number is 432.2, which means 432 and 2/10. Let's practice it again. What if it was a 3? Let's read it together. Ready? 432.3. Now let's say it in word form. 432 and 3/10. Let's do it. Let's keep going. All right, let's read it. 432.4. Word form. 432 and 4/10. Okay? I'm going to erase it and see if you remember. Let's read it. 432.5. Alright, word form, you ready? 432 and 5/10. Because secretly, there's like an invisible denominator right there. It's invisible though, you can't see it. It's kind of like a dotted line. So 432 and 5/10. Okay. One more time. Let's see if you can do it all on your own. Go ahead and say it the first way with a point. Go ahead. Did you say 432.6? All right. Okay, now I want you to say it with word form using the word and. All right, go ahead. Did you say 432 and 6/10? If you did, give yourself a pat on the back. Woohoo! You mastered today's lesson in decimals. All right. I know you want to keep going, right? You want to keep going. I love it, but we can't because we need to just stick simple, basic, one lesson per day. All right, we're going to pick up there tomorrow, I promise. All right, let's move on. Sorry, math, we're moving on to something a little bit more violent and life-changing and world-changing. Yes, I'm talking about World War II. Back up here. World War II? That means there must be World War I, right? Yes, remember? 2 weeks ago we talked about World War I. Remember? Germany decided they wanted to take over the world. And so France and Britain had to say, no, no, you're not. And then the United States entered in 1917. And we were like, and we saved the world, we saved Europe from turning German. Yeah, those Germans, they did not listen and learn because guess what? They're trying to take over the world again. I'm going to show a video to start. Usually I like to read what I wrote, but today I'm going to show you a video of one of my favorite young men, a little boy, who is going to teach you some history about World War II. Now, this boy made this video when he was a little bit younger than you. Kind of crazy, right? All right, watch.
A kid explains history. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Q. Today's topic is World War II. Now, what is a world war? Well, a world war is literally when the whole world takes sides and then fight each other. Except for Switzerland and Spain and Ireland and me, because I wasn't born. But basically everybody else, there were two sides in the war. One was called the Axis. It was made of countries like Germany, Italy, and Japan. They wanted to take land that didn't belong to them. The other was called the Allies, which was countries like the United States, England, and the Soviet Union. In Star Wars terms, the Axis would be the Empire, the Allies would be the rebels. The Darth Vader in all of this is a man called Adolf Hitler. He was in charge of Germany and the leader of the Nazi Party. Boy, was he a scary man. He's behind me, isn't he? Ah! Oh my God! At first, it looked like the Axis was going to win. The Nazis took over almost all of Europe, including France. And Emperor Hirohito's Japan started taking over all the islands in the Pacific. The only thing that stood in the way of Germany was Winston Churchill's England. The United States and the Soviet Union weren't even in the war yet. If England had lost the Battle of Britain, it would have been good. But they didn't! The next thing that happened was Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. It made Franklin D. Roosevelt declare war. and the United States joined the Allies. The head of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, made a deal with Hitler to stay out of things. But when Hitler changed his mind and invaded anyway, the Soviet Union joined the Allies too. It still took a long time to beat the Nazis, and during this time, Hitler ordered his soldiers to kill millions of people, and what became known as the Holocaust, which is one of the worst things that ever happened. Eventually, a big Allied army landed in the beaches of France on an operation called D-Day, and they marched all the way to Berlin. That's Germany's capital city. Hitler wasn't just a bad man, he was also a sore loser. When he realized he lost the war, he killed himself. Japan surrendered a few months later. After the United States used a horrible new weapon on two of their cities, called the atomic bomb. So many people died in World War II. It was really sad. But the world we live in today is totally shaped by it. So we're lucky the Axis powers didn't win. Thank you very much for watching my first video. Hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, so I love that kid. World War II has everything, folks. It's got violence, it's got atomic bombs, it's got genocide, it's got crazy people like Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini. It's got bravery, it's got courage, um, it's got torture, um, and most of all, uh, it's got a lot of history. Okay, World War II has completely shaped the world that we live in today. So I cannot tell you how important it was. Um, of course, it was a war, which means there's a lot of killing, more killing than any other war ever. Um, but it's a very serious topic. There are still some people that are alive today, not very many, but there are some that uh, lived through World War II, some that have even fought in World War II. And the stories that they have to share are incredible. Um, World War II was probably, in my opinion, probably the greatest war in all of world history, like going all the way back forever in all human history. You know, I'm thinking back to even like some of those ancient wars between like Rome and Carthage. Like even that doesn't compare to just the breadth and the amount of people that ended up dying and fighting in World War II. Okay, so there's so much to learn about it. I'm just going to teach you about half today and then half tomorrow. All right, so let me put myself in the corner. If you'd like to read out loud while I read to you, feel free. Oh, sorry. In what became the bloodiest war of all time, World War II, and see the double I? The double I okay, so feel free to read out loud with me, okay? What became the bloodiest war of all time? World War II, pause. See how it's two I's? That's Roman numerals for 1, 2, alright? Both I's equal 1, so if there's two of them, it equals 2. World War II, keep reading, was a result of one man's greed during a time of Great Depression. Yes, I love it. Remember, right before World War II, the 1930s was called the Great Depression. The stock market crashed and people didn't have jobs. That whole time period was called a Great Depression. And during that depression, it didn't just affect America, it affected all countries around the world, especially Germany. And so Germany got hit really hard because remember they lost World War I, so they were already like really low, really having a hard time, and then the depression just made it really bad. All right, terrible. And so let's keep reading. Adolf Hitler rose nuts. Rose to power in Germany during a time of financial misery. So that means money problems. He united the country of Germany under the blank party. Now, do you remember what Hitler's group was called? Starts with an N. Yeah, the Nazi Party. Maybe you knew that. Hitler promising money and power if Germany were to expand across Europe. Okay, pause. Imagine for a second, boys and girls. Just imagine for a second, all right, that you are living on the street because your mom and dad don't have a job, and you're literally like rooting through garbage every night for food, and life sucks. Plain and simple, terrible. And a lot of your friends are also living on the street. Or if you're not living on the street, you're living in like just like a shack that's run down and falling apart. You don't have any money to, you know, even put windows. You just have to put paper or boards up in your windows to keep the wind and rain out. Okay? Can you imagine that? Then some guy comes along and says, "Hey, I promise, if you listen to me, I can get you into a mansion." What would you say to that guy? Yeah, you might say, "Okay, I'm listening." Anything's better than the street. Well, that's what Hitler did. He came along and he said, "Do you really like the way you're living? You are a German. You should be proud of who you are. You should not be living on the streets. We're going to take over the world and take back what was ours." Remember, Germans thought that World War One, remember they lost? They thought that they were doing the right thing. They were trying to take over. So Hitler's basically saying, yeah, you remember 20 years ago when we failed? Well, guess what? You failed because you didn't have the right guy in charge, and I'm here now. And I'm the right guy, and I'm going to lead us. We're going to take over Europe, and then we're going to take over the world. And you're going to be rich, and you're going to have a beautiful home. Right? And you're going to have slaves to do all your work for you. True story, folks. And a lot of Germans were like, okay, sign me up. I'll be a Nazi. Yeah, I don't care if we have to do bad things. I'm sick of being poor. Ugh, not good, not good. Okay, let's get back to rating. All right, right here, pick up with me, all right? Like World War One, that's what the I stands for, Germany became the center of a global uprising that would take the lives of 80 million people to put down. Yeah, you heard me right. 80 million people died in World War II, thanks to Hitler. Hitler convinced Germans that they were the descendants of the great empires of the past, like the Greek and the Romans. He united the entire nation under this idea that they were better than everyone else and needed to purify the world of those called unworthy. Pause. So, Hitler told the German people, hey, guess what? You were born into the greatest ethnicity of all time. Remember we talked about ethnicity, like where your ancestors come from? Germans are the purest human race. Okay? Well, think about races. You've got Germans, which are pretty much like white Europeans. You've got African Americans. You've got Asian Americans. You've got, I'm sorry, not Americans, Africans and Asians. And then you've got like other ethnic groups like the Jews. Hitler said, the only one that matters is the Aryan white race. White people, basically. And everyone else, unworthy. Get rid of them or make them our slaves. He would say that. all right? And guess what? The Germans, they were like, okay, that sounds good. We'll do that. I know, right? Can you imagine that? If someone came up to you and said, oh, black people, they should be our slaves. What would you say? Yeah, right? You'd say, you're a terrible person. No, they shouldn't. We're all equal, right? We're all equal. We're all human beings, right? God made us all equal. Well, not the Germans. They were in a really bad place, and sometimes when you're in a really bad place, it's easy to believe things that aren't true. You start to hear what you want to hear, and that's really what happened to the Germans. And you know, me myself, I'm actually um, I have the most German blood in me than any other country, right? I'm like 75% German. And whenever I'm talking about Germany, I'm not talking about Germany now. I'm talking about Germany back in the early 20th century, okay? So whenever if I'm criticizing Germans, don't think that I'm criticizing Germans that live nowadays, okay? Or Germany as a country, because I'm German myself. I'm talking about those people were literally brainwashed by a man that was more evil than any other man in history, Adolf Hitler. Pretty much the devil in human form, tricking them. And part of me, part of me is angry that they were willing to get tricked so easily, but another part of me kind of understands a little bit. I'm not saying that it's right, that what they believed was right. What I am saying though is I can empathize a little bit with why so many Germans were able to be brainwashed by Hitler. Okay? All right, so that's where we're going to stop with today. So, pretty much, you got a little background here of uh, Hitler. Um, sorry, background is in like this what's kind of juicing up and getting this war started. All right. So tomorrow we'll talk about what unfolds um, after Hitler comes to power and how really World War II begins. And then we'll talk more about um, the United States' role and how we can end up entering the war after Pearl Harbor, okay? Because World War II, there's so many things going on, right? There's actually, uh, like in World War One, the war was pretty much fought strictly in Europe. World War Two, no. Half was fought in Europe, half was fought in the Pacific, which is like the Pacific Ocean. So we might not get through this all tomorrow either. This might take us a couple days, which is fine because it always does. World War II is just such a big event in our history. It takes a couple days to teach. So, all right, guys. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Try to read a little bit, please. Um, I'm super pumped. Uh, Maybe you've read the book The One and Only Ivan. Maybe you haven't. If you haven't, you should. But it's one of my favorite books by one of my favorite authors, Catherine Applegate. Well, she just released a sequel to The One and Only Ivan called The One and Only Bob. So Bob is the dog from that book. So it's coming to my house tomorrow, and I can't wait to read it. So that's kind of what I'm waiting for to read. I guess I'm also reading a lot of Dr. Seuss de Campbell. He really likes Oh, the Things She Can Think. There's a lot of weird characters in that book. But all right, guys, love you, miss you. Take it easy. Write me a letter if you get bored. Bye.